Well, I'm happy to report back on a couple of things. I know last week in the meeting, there was a question about some math supports that came up, and I knew that there was one vendor I wanted to check in with about, I think it was KiwiWrite was something that was brought up. So I said I had heard about it. So I did go talk to them. Let me pull up, I will put their website in the chat. So as a way to report back, so KiwiWrite, the two things I learned about these math tools are they're still very much in the beta process. But KiwiWrite is more of a software program that's designed to take the handwriting out of math. So it works with a mouse or a touch tablet. And then there's like like a blank page of paper next to a screen. And so the screen you can access to do your math functions. So some of the questions that came up were, is it switch accessible? How are users going to be able to, how are all users going to be able to use it? So the developers are getting feedback. They are looking for people to use this and give feedback. So a colleague that I was with is actually had a student in mind that she was hoping to maybe be able to trial this with the student and then get the feedback from the student. It does complicated math. There's like some of the buttons have, further levels. So you can press and hold a button and then you can get some options to go to other levels. So right now it is in the, like I said, it's in the beta stage. So they're looking at, how to make it like scan, like switch accessible through scanning and those sorts of things. But at this point it is not. So that's kind of most of what I know about KiwiWrite. I think it's definitely something that as they develop it could be a pretty valuable tool. The other thing I went to is more of a peripheral. I'm going to pull it up. I will add the link to the chat. And this is a math keyboard called Arithmetype. And right now it's also in the beta stages. In fact, I asked about it and it has still been 3D printed. And so they are in the process of trying to get it to more the injectable molded printed, but right now it was 3D. So it seemed a little kind of wonky, but it's because it's all brand new. So this is a 3-part keyboard that in the very middle is more like a number pad and it's just USB, you just plug it in. So in the middle section is just like your regular number pad, addition, subtraction, division, equal sign, those sorts of things. And then on either side of that, you have different math functions. So on one side, you might have the greater than, equal to, less than, equal to kind of stuff. And then on the third side, there might be more like your sine, cosine, tangential kinds of functions and things like that with the math notation. So this keyboard, you have to be in like a equation editor kind of a program. So you can't just like plug it into a dock. I mean, you have to kind of be into more the equation editor program. And they are also looking into things like having it be switch accessible, use with scanning and that sort of thing. So right now, since it's in the beta stages, I don't know that it does that. The other thing that they're doing is they have these covers for it. So you can block out portions of the keyboard if users aren't using that level of math, or if it's too many keys or something like that. So this is also in the beta stages, but I think it also probably has a lot of potential for particular users. So Alyssa, I see you were about to say something. Did you talk to them about this also?
I had a very long conversation with them and even had a follow-up conversation afterwards over the weekend, because on their website, there are some what they call math formatting pages. I don't know if you saw that, but when you're on their website, if you go to math formatting pages, it brings up kind of some work pages that you can use. And so it's pages that you could actually use right now, even if you didn't have that keyboard. So if I were going to say I want to add 2 plus 2, and if I wanted to add an additional number, you see how it's automatically putting them over here. And then let's say I wanted to add 1 again, it gives you the lineup, right? So that you could go in and then put 5 as an answer. They have a formatting page for subtraction. And I think it's obviously set to use with their physical device.
Right.
There's subtraction, there's a polynomial equation, which makes my head hurt a little bit. And then there's a graphing mode that again would use some of those like right-sided functions over here to do graphing. So what the conversation I had with them was about, okay, that's great. And I love this, but if you're doing this and it's building keystrokes, right? How could we leverage what this device does for a device user, for someone using an accent or, you know, someone using any device where, again, all this keyboard's doing is sending a keystroke,
right?
Keystroke through. There was, until this weekend, on the math formatting page, another link to a Google Doc page, which I think they didn't mean to have live yet, because I discovered it and asked questions about it. And they were like, oops, that wasn't really ready for like public consumption. So she was apologetic and took it down, but she said, as soon as that's ready, I will reach back out to you and have a conversation. So I think to me, it's a question of, you know, having them build in the ability for it to, have device pages set up to emulate what they're doing on the keyboard. And they were open absolutely to kind of partnering to figure out both that and then the switch accessibility for, you know, do we, have an on-screen emulator that copies what's there on the keyboard. Like, I think they were open to those discussions. And as its own and a standalone, I think it has a positive, space that it could support as well. And they were, like I said, open to conversations, which always makes me feel better about working with a vendor.
Right. And I would agree with that. And that they were like, that's why I think they were really excited to be at a place where they could kind of get, a lot of input, so they could take these pieces back and do the problem solving and that kind of stuff, because everybody approaches these things with a different need in mind or a different idea in mind. And so I think they were willing, both companies, I think, were willing to kind of take this information and work with it and see kind of how they could even, tweak these products a little bit better. So I have not dug into the website as far as Udalys, so that's good. I do know that they said it will work with, like if you have, and I could be confusing it with both, but I think it was this one, like if you did have other worksheets that were scanned in or something like that, that you could use the math arithmetic keyboard to, like if they were in OneNote or something like that, you could
I didn't
access
go
them.
that far in conversation. I know we had Kiwi there.
Kiwi Write, I think it was called.
Kiwi Write was there. And then the math curriculum that is switch accessible, that I know we had a very long conversation with. She came over to the Lesson Picks booth and had a very long conversation with us about, as we were talking about what they're trying to do and what their goals are, and those kinds of things. So I think that's the first time I've seen that much math.
Right.
Which was good to see.
That's why I was kind of intrigued to go talk to them too, because it's like, I get asked questions like, instructors will come into the center, or students who are interested in teaching math or science or something like that will come into the center, and they'll be like, well, what about math? And I'm like, well, I have a beaded number line. I mean, it's like, it's just, there's so many simplistic things. It's nice to see people delving into the more complex levels of math and trying to make that more accessible and remove some barriers for that. So it's a good start. I was excited that it was a good start. And like you, I was also kind of excited to see more than just one thing about math there. So
I talked to them too. I was with Lauren Enders, and I were talking to them specifically about keyboard equivalents. So were the keystrokes that were coming out of the arithmetite keyboard equivalents. And because we were talking about using it with eye gaze systems, because all we would need to do is just
Mhm.
put the keyboard equivalents in like we used to. And so she was aware of only one of the, she had no idea that there were, like multiple. She said, oh, well, we've been talking to the iTyper people. And then Lauren just kind of gave her the whole list of people around that she should talk to. So that's my big interest, is because Equatio has some keyboard equivalents, but not completely, right? Because I think their idea with sighted, full functioning mouse people is that you just put that little keyboard up on the screen, then you can click on it. And so the idea that people who are blind, people who don't physically touch a keyboard or an on-screen keyboard, might need keyboard equivalents is often foreign to new developers in that area. So that's one of the things that I want to keep my eyes on with that. And it was the same thing with Kiwi type. There were keyboard equivalents, but not everything. Like once you got up into higher level math symbols, there weren't keyboard equivalents that you could produce them. So that was a new concept to them. It's interesting. What other new things were people excited about? I like the new case from PRC.
The new what?
They have a new iPad case,
Oh, nice.
which of course immediately has to be changed because of the announcement from Apple last week of the new sizes.
Right.
But it's a replacement for the chat wrap.
Oh, okay.
So it's nice to see a case that's going to potentially have the speaker pack in it.
Yes, that would be nice.
Personally, I'm frustrated. I have to wait all the way until 2023 to see the full Building Wings Retopia Go portion of things. Just to see the little glimpse and think, okay, we could have kids that are, pre-K plus getting some good basic literacy skills. But we have to wait. It's like a big tease.
Oh, that does stink.
That's what closing the gap is for the
Uh.
vendors. Like, here comes something. But yeah, I would rather have it once it's fully vetted and all the components are there.
Absolutely. I don't want, I'm not against beta versions, but I think it's a lot harder to get people on board to use something if it's like, well, and this is still coming and this might be ready soon. And
People are not used to drafts. I'm looking through my vendor hall list. I'm like, what else was I?
I feel like I got home and I feel like I really haven't had time to to kind of process and organize, things. I still have stuff all over and kind of notes everywhere, and sessions that I wanted to go to that I couldn't. I haven't downloaded kind of those slides yet and looked through, that kind of stuff. So I still feel like I'm processing and needing to organize, but it was energizing, and it was fun to see people again, live. And it's funny too for me because I've done a lot of online things in Washington State with a group of folks where it seems like I've been around them for 2 years, right? And then all of a sudden here we are together in person, like after 2 years, because they live clear across state or something. So that was like super fun, just to kind of connect in person and have that energy, that kind of energy. Kelly, I sat in on your session about meaningful kind of thinking about meaningful accommodations, and that was so appreciative. I know I always look for kind of more of those little bit more conceptual kind of sessions too with working at the university. It's not like I'm in a position to like recommend things for a district to use or something, you know, so I'm working with pre-service teachers. So I'm always trying to find good information for them in terms of their consideration process, like considering, you know, infusing all this stuff and who you are now and who you might be as a teacher and that sort of thing. So I loved, I just love the language about considering you need to do this as in terms of using, you know, well, if you want to do this, you'd have this opportunity. If you use it, you'd have this opportunity, or, you know, those sorts of things, like just including that choice and just the tone, the attitude, that just one word makes a difference, you know, it really makes a difference. And in terms of like opening someone's mind, and not only just with accommodations, but really all of life, right? You know, how you approach anybody with things and your attitude. So anyway, I really appreciated that session and took several nuggets out of that I feel like I can apply to when I'm working with students here at the university level.
Well,
So,
thank you. I will not take credit for that session. That session conceptually is all Donna's.
Oh,
All
okay.
Donna McNair's. And then I just kind of ride her coattails.
Okay. Well,
all of her with my examples that fit with her thinking, right?
yeah.
But all of her students that she works with are completely integrated into general ed. And so she faces you know, often barriers that I don't face when I've got my kids who are full-time at home or,
right.
you know, part-time in general and special ed. But that's what she totally deals with, kids who are blind, who are full-time in integrated, and kids that have multiple disabilities, but blindness is their chief, you know,
Right.
factor. And so comes from a lot of her work of working with parents to get their thinking going with how does this work without it being militant. And then from the educator side, how does this work without always giving pushback? So it's that delicate play between the pushing and the pushback, and where do we find that middle? And I think those ideas of opportunities, you know, you have an opportunity to do this if, you know, you choose one of these three things for the student. Because, you know, as a VI teacher, and I, having worked at the university as well with incoming students, it always impressed me the difference in independence and autonomy with the kids who had a vision impairment and what they knew about their accommodations and their assistive technology, how much more independent they were than students that had learning disabilities, dyslexia. Individuals with physical disabilities were often in the middle, depending upon what other complex factors that they had. But you clearly knew who at high school was empowered with what their opportunities and choices were, and who at high school that the main focus was success. And it's not that success is a bad thing, but it was the success that getting them to success by overriding their independence in getting themselves set up, and where do these files come from? And I have no idea what, I mean, I remember asking one incoming freshman about, well, what talking word processor or what electronic reader did you use? Well, I used something that made the books talk, you know, and then he just had like attitude with me, like, well, it made the books talk. And I said, that's like 300 products.
Right. Yeah.
Right. That's 300. I need to know, was it all contained? Was it something that you were on the web with, you know? And he honestly could not understand the questions and got frustrated with me, like I was being a barrier to him being successful at college. I'm like, well, that barrier was the last 3 years of your schooling and your support system. So we need to find out. You need to contact people, find out, or learn something new.
Right.
Like, let's explore and then you're starting from scratch. And, you know, it's a big frustration on everybody's part, right? And then, you know, you're at college and then you get the parents like, why aren't you helping my son the same way the teachers at high school did? Was that, well,
they're on their own.
high school helped him, and your son doesn't even know what product. Do you know what product? And then of course she went to his IEP and it wasn't listed, right? Because, you know, we've got those differences around the United States about whether we put
Right.
names of things in or not. And so we were in a big catch-22. So I do like Donna's perspective of
Mhm.
really going, it might be slower, but in the end, I think it's more empowering. I was looking on the schedule for there was a session that was before, and it was these two people, what it was called, Playing with Switches, Opening the World of Possibilities. And it was Loretto. I don't know. Sorry, Loretto, if you're watching this video, I cannot say your last name. And Christopher Murata, which was like, wow, you know,
Right.
like Mike's cousin across the country. And they did a bang up job in an hour of go. So it's worth getting their hand out. And they were from, I'm trying to see what center they were from. I have one of their cards somewhere in that pile over there. And because I talked to Christopher about, you know, do they contract out? I have a student that I really need some extra support on because I do not have enough hours. But they went through lots of different access methods, switch access methods to the things that were built in, things that you put on top. When they talked about Morse code, I lit up. And so it really was, and I didn't get to see the whole thing because I had presented at the 8 o'clock hour and then I was presenting at 11 and I was shifting stuff. So I just caught the end of it. So I don't know if anybody was in the whole thing. Well, we will have to stalk these people.
I know. Well, I mean, obviously, and we have to get Murata and Murata together. So that's a whole nother.
Yeah,
So
there we
he
go.
will, other Murata will be at ATIA because we actually took a picture of it and tweeted Mike and was like, hey, we found a new Murata in town.
Nice.
So I think we could definitely reach out to him that way. And
Poor guy, though, he's going to be forever known as other
the
Murata.
other Murata.
The other Murata. That's right. It was a banging session.
We could call him the younger Murata. Would that be better?
Like that.
That's what happens when Murata doesn't come to town hall.
There you go. Yeah, you get picked on. What was so funny is when I went up to him and I said, hey, you know, I'm really looking for somebody to partner up with. And then it was, you know, all the pieces of, well, are you looking for an assistive technology specialist? I'm like, no, we kind of have one of those. And then, you know, I just kept getting, were you looking for an AAC evaluation? I'm like, no, that's already done. And so I think he's so used to, as many of us, that you're coming in on the ground floor, like, and I said, no, this is going to be really fun because we're already beyond the ground floor with
basic,
this
yeah.
student, right? So that was, it was an interesting position to be in, talking to somebody that you had like, you know, 5 minutes to talk to while they're packing up and you're setting up.
So I have a maybe closing the gap unrelated question. So I have a school that's asking if there is something more protective than laminating paper to make a kind of paper book that would be, you know, modeling example and less expensive than Pixie Pal. Really what they want is a Pixie Pal that's not $300.
Waterproof paper, but it's great, but it's not. I mean, depending, it's pricey. Like you might spend not that much less than, but you could get, like, I looked into it, like I was making these for, this week. And, if I'd wanted it done on waterproof paper, it would have been like $60 to $100. Now that's for like a
smaller,
30-page book. So it's going to hold more than, and it would have been a full page. It's like, it wouldn't, I had to do the cutting, right? That wouldn't have made the difference. So it would have been more pages than you can hold in a Pixie Pal. So if you're looking for something like that, but that's where the waterproof is really durable, but it isn't inexpensive. You can buy it and print it yourself. Like that was being printed at like FedEx or something.
Office Depot,
So
Office
it
Max or
might
whatever.
ultimately be less expensive, but I also didn't want to bind it myself. Like I was like,
just want somebody else to just do it. Yeah. And I don't mind. I'm like, I have a binder, like I wouldn't mind doing the binding of it if it were less expensive and more durable, because like we have a number of students that we really like. Basically, she would like the adults in her school. She's Speech Path, the adults in her school to have access to more robust than a single page core board. I mean, we have our single page core boards that we use, and they need more robust language than that they're modeling. But at the same time, like I offered to do some paper,
I mean,
some paper
200
versions, and
the 200, I don't know how good some of these are, the
I know, I've been using 10
25
mil.
sheets, yeah, 25 sheets of the 5 mil from TerraSlate, which I know is a good brand, is $18.99. Then it's
Yeah,
like 1 sheet pack of Write in the Rain all weather copier paper
I was
is
gonna say the Write in the Rain is definitely a cheaper brand. I've ordered some, but I haven't used it. I've only used the TerraSlate, but it's significantly cheaper.
The issue with
and-
Write in Rain is it's also, you have to look at the transparency level.
Yes,
That there's some of
they're
these
like
versions
double.
that the opacity level, you can see the symbols from one side to another.
right.
okay. But I've also laminated just to give it some extra durability. I've laminated, if I'm doing multiple pages, sometimes I just do the first few sheets, but
But yeah, I mean, there's a
I
range
mean-
from 100 Hydronote blank copy paper for 100 sheets is 46. So it might be just like trying a few and seeing what is.
Yeah, because I could get 1,000 sheets of TerraSlate for like $450, which
Right.
is
It's gonna get you-
I was gonna say that would get me a fair number of books, and it's about a Pixie Pal and a half. Like trying to do it price wise. I understand she had a mini grant and she was like, oh, I really want to know where you got the device you had. And it turned out that I got the device I had that was a Pixie Pal that I paid out of pocket for. And she's like, oh, that would be my entire grant to get one. So I was trying to come up with a middle of the road solution that would be more durable, be worth the time investment to print and to have, and not have it get, destroyed or be done.
And as lovely as the Pixie Pal is, you can only have like
Right.
3 or 4 you can't, you're going to get
6
max
or
of like 8.
8,
You're not
yeah.
going to get depending
Right.
on what you want, you're not going to, depending on what you're looking for, you're not going to have tabs the same way. So
Absolutely.
I love the Pixie Pal. Like you want to have it as an option, or you've got maybe like, your core board and maybe like 2 or 3 other pages that you really want to have access to. But
Yeah.
Do you have an option to use different laminate? Because I know like in schools, they've got the huge rolls, but what about
Yeah,
like
I
the
have-
like
I
cards,
could-
like it's super thick. It almost makes it like cardstock, and then you could
Yeah, my
bind
other thought
that.
was to do cardstock, print it on cardstock,
Mhm.
and then use 5 mil, 7 mil, 10, some other stronger, the 10
Mhm,
mil
right,
laminate.
mhm.
Would that be more durable?
depending how many pages it are, it's going to make it kind of fat too. Like remember the waterproof
Right.
paper is going to be thinner and
Thick.
durable as opposed to
Yeah.
laminating, and it's more time consuming. You've got to laminate,
Absolutely.
right?
Cut.
So Sarah, I mean, this is fine. This is for a demonstration. Like, so I just did
Right.
it on nice cardstock.
Cardstock. Yeah.
Right.
When I've gone to the 10 mil, I'm just doing the 1 sheet at a time through. So there's no other cutting, right? Like
Right.
one
Mhm.
through. And I
Mhm.
just do top page and bottom, like in a pod book, I do top page and bottom page. And then I would use the waterproof paper in
In
the
between.
in-between pages, except for the big dividers, I do in 5 mil.
Okay.
So
that
like
makes
the
sense.
divider for school and the first page of categories, and some of the heavily used pages I do in 5 mil. So then they support the middle of it. Gail, one of the things that Gail Porter warns though with the waterproof paper is it's the official term slidey. It's very slidey.
Mhm.
And they have been found, and I found with a couple of my kids, that when they touch their books, even if it's like a core board plus flips, it moves on them and they get very frustrated.
I
and
could,
so
I would
she's
be
been
frustrated too.
Yeah, every time you move it and it kind of like the page curls up because it just
Yeah.
slides on top of each other. And so Gail Porter's been recommending for really using laminate for kids that are really tough touchers that kind of tend to push and shove
Mhm.
it
Mhm.
to reduce the frustration factor.
What is she wants this for,
So
as
she
like
has, she has we have a bunch of kids on that campus who are trialing or already have devices. And she knows that she is only one person and cannot be a great modeler in a bunch of different places. So we were trying to come up with an in-between of like, do we put a whole nother iPad out there for modeling, which is possible, but not always practical? Or do we put out a replication of the pages that right now, because most of them are beginning device users, that on a robust level that they would access most frequently?
so it's an adult using it, not a kid.
Yes, correct.
The
Correct.
sliding might not be an issue, or it might even be like, I don't know, I haven't used this enough, like would decent higher level cardstock that's got some durability, like if it's an adult, or is it going to get spit on or dirty or whatever? And so you do want, I think it depends what.
Yeah, I think that
Are
was
they
part of their
modeling
thinking. It's
multiple pages, or is it just that core board set?
I think it's multiple pages, which is why, having
makes
the
it-
ability to flip, like I can see where, I guess I need a middle of the road mid-tech solution there that's just not there yet. And maybe I'll come up with something and become a millionaire and
Luck with that.
Then we'll be
Yeah.
talking about your beta tested products
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
Closing the Gap,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
probably not, but
So this is my touch chat
yeah.
printed, right? So that's a 10 mil.
Yeah.
And then I did all the flips. I think all the flips are also in 10. And
Okay.
it's held up for, I think I've probably had this for 6 years
Yeah.
with me modeling and then,
Yeah, and that's
the
kind of the
training.
direction we were looking, and then running any number of things through the spiral so that they could wear it.
Yeah.
Guitar straps we've attached to boards like that, other things like that. So to me, it's like I think they just want to have it available and not have to be something else they carry. And yet still have it be durable enough that if it gets rained on for half a second outside as they're going in, that it doesn't destroy the whole thing. So I appreciate that. I will be buying some more TerraSlate. I think I have some somewhere, but I'm going to try to, maybe I'll make one both ways and see which one lives the longest. As a possibility.
Well, and definitely the type of binding makes a difference, spiral versus comb, and then the quality of them. Because I've had both spiral and comb bindings fall apart.
Mhm.
Yeah. The spiral seems to last a little bit longer, but there are some cheap versions out there that just kind of crack over time.
Well, it's for me, it's like unwinding. So like having it so that it's not set up right. So like it's not going to unwind. That's the worst.
Stick little beads on the ends.
Yeah, that's what I got to do with this one. Yeah, I got so frustrated with the comb binding. I want to throw it in the trash and I'd pay somebody else. I was like, no, I can't do it. Anybody want a comb binder? I'll ship it to you for free.
Nope.
Got one. Okay, the other thing I was excited about was the bags that PRC was giving out and what Kelly Shooting showed to use it as a Halloween. I'm like,
Yeah. She put it out with her camping over the weekend at her trick or treat spite. I was like, look at you. Very
awesome.
inventive.
Well, and I do have to say, like, from not having anything to do with the AAC user, but the little tech bags that PRC gave away, that became my new travel makeup bag, by the way. Just
It's versatile.
it's like, oh, little slots. I can have my I like my mascara in this one and my foundation in this one and my brushes in this pocket. So,
I'm
yeah.
sure they'll be so happy that they allowed you to be an
I know, it
organized
was
makeup
really
user.
fun. Because I already had it. I mean, I love it as a tech bag, but I have a tech bag, but I was like, oh, I like this. You know, to hold my spackle.
Yeah, they had those at ATIA they were giving away, and yeah, they became my tech bag replacement. I'm always on the good lookout for a good tech bag.
I mean, you know, and then trying to think like what I went to. It was a jam packed. Like I feel like I was hardly in the lesson picks booth. I presented a lot, had fun. I like my co-presenters here. We had fun.
We did. We need a bigger room next year for ours.
We do need a bigger room.
I'm so
Yeah, there
glad the
seems to
fire
be a lot
code.
of misplacement of room, but I know it's hard when we try and do that for ATIA to pick what rooms things should be in, but yeah, there
I'm just-
definitely was.
I'm
a
glad the fire
mismatch of-
code. Yeah, God, the fire code people didn't come right by at that moment because we would have been in trouble. There was no egress pathway. We had people all around the sides and in the front.
Yeah, ours was, I mean, like Kelly and I had a lot in ours, but it wasn't quite as bad. Both Kelly and I, Kelly Fonner and Kelly Suding and I, but that was definitely the most crowded was the one that we did, Alyssa.
With Judy, yeah.
It also means like it's good, it's wonderful to know that there was
A
a
needed, it was
good
a needed
audience for
topic.
that. That means
Yeah.
it's a topic that needs to be, which is why I'm still annoying. Why didn't that get accepted for ASHA and ATI? And
Is this your
and-
executive function one?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
I was going to go to that because two colleagues and I were presenting on executive function on Friday. So I was just going to go in but it was so packed. And I thought, you know what, you guys are going to have awesome handouts, so I don't even have to go. But
we do have good, yeah. So if you've got that, yeah, the handout.
yeah, it was so packed. And ours was kind of a repeat of something that we'd done locally, you know, at our state level, that virtually, but we did it in person. And so we were thinking there were several sessions on executive function, you know, we noticed at Closing the Gap. And then we thought, okay, it's Friday at 11. There's not gonna be there. Like people are gonna be done. They're gonna be heading off to the airport. It was packed, like ours was packed. It wasn't out the door like yours was, but we had, I mean, every seat was practically filled and a lot of people stayed to the very end and came up and still wanted to chat and ask questions or, you know, give some comments or suggestions or whatever, you know, let us know some things. So I was actually kind of stunned, number one, that it was a topic that had been already represented a few times before and also the time of the day. But I agree with you, Beth, it goes to the fact that it's like the topic that people probably need to address more. And they want supports for it because it's a big issue, regardless of what level of age group you're working with, right?
I just put the link to our in there if anybody who didn't make it to it wanted it. But yeah, I agree completely. I think it's such a needed topic, and we presented a variation on this at AHA, and it was really well received, but then not accepted again for this year for we wanted to do it as a 3-hour
Workshop.
slot.
Yeah.
Yeah, we felt like ours was 1 hour. We felt like it could have been at least 90 minutes. I mean, because we were rushing through and, you know, not really, we just had to kind of rush through and finish.
And definitely the diehard spots, right? Those live, I mean.
The conference closers.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
For
And these
years,
things
I
got
think for
relevant.
15 years, I was always in the Saturday 1 o'clock spot. So the exhibit hall would be closing down and there'd still be this one last session. We were told it was a compliment.
Oh, yeah.
I think my struggle with the schedule was how we had some that were like double sessions up against sessions that were individual sessions. So it's like, okay, maybe I wanted to do the double topic, but I also really wanted to go to that individual session. So I almost wish it was all double topics up against each other and then separate those single hour spots.
Yeah, we had
Suggestion for them, right? Make sure you make that suggestion for them because Becky and Megan are really seem to be amenable to it. And like the 90-minute sessions are gone. Like ATIA is an hour. There aren't like anything in between other than doing pre-conference, right? So They don't,
All the
they don't
sessions
have,
for ATIA are only hour-long sessions?
yeah, everything during the main conference.
Yeah, and we did a 2.5 hour one. I did a writing one with Caroline and a group of folks. And yeah, I could see how it would be easy enough to kind of put them all in one slot. And yes, then you're limited, but you're always choosing between sessions anyway. I mean, there's always, I mean, it was like, I want to go to that. Oh, I'm presenting then, you know.
So I just added a link to the Special Education Tech Center there out of Central Washington University. And they, we referred to this as some of our resources, but they created this website when schools were closed, you know, as a way to support parents and teachers and students. So I put that in there too for some, just another
Yeah, thank you.
tool for folks.
I'm gonna
Mhm.
add it to my Wakelet.
I love hearing those words roll right off your tongue, Beth. Adding it to the Wakelet.
But I don't have the Wakelet. I don't know why I can't. I guess you're the owner of the Wakelet. It doesn't come, I don't know.
I did share it with you, but I
I
can
know you
add it.
did. But like, am I on there to add to it?
You should be. If not, I can fix that.
Waiting for Jennifer to talk about the symbols.
Sorry, I'm
There in
super
person,
tired. I
Diane.
am super tired, and I've had all sorts of tech issues in this meeting. So my mouse wasn't working, my headphones weren't working. I don't know. Can you hear me? My microphone, I'm not even sure if that's working. So
Yep.
Yeah.
so catch up.
He was
Hold on.
very excited about the new symbols.
So Ken Hackworth, who does the Volkswitch website for the 3D printing key cards, had a fantastic session. And I probably shouldn't admit this since it's recorded, but I went just kind of to show support of Ken. I worked with him on some of the key guards, but had never met him in person. And I really didn't think I was going to like attend and really like, oh, bliss symbols, like, you know, whatever, like they've been around a long time. We don't use them a lot in the US. But I totally was just absolutely like engaged the entire time. One by Ken, because he must be a genius. He had the script for everything that he said in his slides, and he almost verbatim spoke it without even looking down at the notes. So he must have had every single thing memorized, and he uses some big words, and so he like nailed it. So you can really look through the bliss symbols both. I don't even know the name of the session. I have it tweeted out, so it's on my Twitter feed. But he very, very interesting. And so I had some of the Project Core symbols, and he talks about them, and he's in this session, and he talks about how, you know, the concept of them is really, you know, genius, and but talks about some of the reasons why they may not be the best, you know, going back to some of the symbols, and the reason why you might pick, you know, something like this for different, which is quite arbitrary. You've got a square and you've got a circle on a heart. And then he talks a lot about the research and the theory behind bliss symbols, which I've known a lot about. Well, I've known of bliss symbols, but I didn't necessarily know exactly how they worked. And he goes into, and he has a video that's in his presentation, a YouTube video that explains the history of bliss. It kind of explains, you know, like how the symbols combine and form. And then he's got Braille on the side of all of his 3D printed symbols. And after listening to like the rules behind bliss, it really made a lot of sense to me and really changed my opinion, because really, like, if I'm teaching somebody that this is the symbol for different, it really isn't any different than teaching them, you know, the symbol for bliss. And this is actually loud, but it's not really any different than teaching them, because neither are really all that iconic. So, you know, you look at, like, I always do that in presentations. I take a core board and I usually show it in Chinese, and say, what does this symbol mean? And most people suddenly, when you take that label away, have no idea what the symbol is. But if you put the board up in English, you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. I can see where that means of, whereas you take that label away. So I think, I don't know, I think in my practice, I'm going to go back and watch it again and process through it again. But I think I will switch to using the 3D printed bliss symbols. And he's got, if you printed the key guards, you do it in OpenSCAD, and he has a sort of template that you kind of go through and you fill out. It's the same exact thing for the bliss symbols. And you can actually take all of the images, because all the images are free for anybody. And he even went so far as showing how you could take those images and put them on any of or most of the high-tech devices as well, because all those image files are available for free. So it was very, very well thought out. He presented with.
Yeah, we had a request from
and a
somebody,
3D guide.
could we add them to lesson picks? So I need to talk to Bill and Lori, is could we add the bliss symbols to lesson picks as having an option of that, being able to, for people to be able to create resources. So I have to find out.
Yeah,
I need
it
to look deeper, like, are they truly like no licensing needed for them? And
Well, and I mean, bliss symbols have been around for years and years and years.
Right.
And I was talking about it with somebody else who didn't really want me to mention her name, but she said, and she's right, we're one of the only countries in the world that don't use bliss symbols. And so there are lots and lots of people that have bought into it. And again, like, you take like the different shapes and the different things, and they mean different things, and they really like form a language. And
We
so,
used to.
yeah,
I had a kid at HMS that had one of the booths there that had a huge bliss board, and we used to teach bliss. And other things became more popular because people felt as though bliss was too complicated. For the same reason that some people think that unity symbols are too complicated to use the same symbol over and over again. But certainly with the students that I had and the young adults that I had that used bliss, they talk to each other. If you go to ISAC, to the International AAC conference, the communicators that can talk to each other are the bliss users, right? Because it crosses language. They use the same symbol, but then whatever their native language word is, but this is the same, right? So, the symbol with water is mixed with something. The symbol with places is matched with something else. And the symbol's the same, whether you're speaking Spanish or English or French or, Czech. And so it is, you will find them, they find each other very quickly at the conference and have a conversation.
And again, if you're going to be working on 3D printed symbols, I mean, this is very abstract. No more abstract, in my opinion, than the bliss symbols, but at least this gives you a language to work off of and something to build on, whereas this really does not at all. And just the quality, you can scale them in his like bliss symbol like editor. So if you had a kid or somebody, an individual that couldn't grab something like this, it could be bigger. It's just, you can change colors. He went off of Fitzgerald Key, but you can change the colors. It all has to do whatever PLA material you're putting in there. So I don't know. I really I walked away from that session getting far more than I thought I would have out of it. It really got me thinking. It's probably the session that got me thinking the most.
Well, I'm definitely going to run the symbols by Donna McNair, because Braille and how big Braille is and touch thinking are a big component of what she does with teaching Braille. So I'm interested in whether these letters are too close, and if they're too compact to be on that side. So, but I'm not going to make that decision. I'm going to send them off to her and see what she thinks. And I think, the idea of color and shape, all of that comes out of the work that Texas School for the Blind has done over the time, where certain shapes represent a part of speech. And so I think Project Core was really smart to follow along with that, where the heart shape means a certain part of speech. and an oval means a certain part of speech. And then some of the commercially available things like stacks went with the same shape with just the top. And for some kids, that's enough. I have some kids who are deafblind that they need the whole shape to feel different. You know, and it has to feel very different, one shape to another, to know whether, I don't know, like that spoon that is on the oval means spoon versus the spoon that's on the square, that's a rougher surface, means restaurant. So that, you know, when it, but that's got more to do with tangibles on top of it than a symbol or a bliss. So
Well, the other component that I didn't talk about is Ken on his Volkswitch website has a device that you can build, and you can put in a RFID tag. And so when you are printing these, you can inside put an RFID tag, and then you can slide it over the device and it will say that word out loud. So there are other components that you can also work into this for that auditory output. You know, one of Ken's big complaints about these is that the file format that these are shared in, you cannot change and you cannot adapt. It's the STL file. So with his editor, you can customize this as much as you want, whereas these are what they are. So I also thought that there was some benefit to that customization. And I think Ken is open to feedback from other people. And, you know, he would certainly, if Donna had any feedback on the Braille, I think he would certainly find ways that if she wanted that customized, that you could, and there may already be ways to space the Braille out. I'm not exactly sure. I haven't looked that much into any of it yet.
Yeah, and I put the link to the Voice It, which is that RFID kind of DIY solution. Reminds me a lot of the, I'm gonna blank on the name.
Logan, the
Prox
Logan.
Talker.
Prox
Yeah,
Talker.
Talker.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. It's just the DIY version of it that is some 3D printed, some enclosure and for, you know, stuff that you have to buy. But in terms of like putting it together, it is not a gigantic task if you have those pieces, because it's using our Arduino, like a little kind of microcontroller inside of it to read those and look for the sound file that's been recorded and connect the two of them.
And you
what I
can
really
put
like
on
about all
some
of this is it gives us a more robust feature match. It's not just like, oh, you use tactiles, it's this thing or this thing. You know, now there are some more components
Well,
that
yeah,
we
do
can
you
really
need-
match to what a user needs.
Yeah. Do you need voice output? Do you need this? Do you have somebody who's deaf and, you know, has a vision impairment? And what features? And I don't know that anybody's ever done that like dedicated feature match kind of chart for this end of things. But I do like that it gives us more options, because I think sometimes in the work that we do, it's you access it by touch or you use eye gaze, and they forget all the other things in between and all the other users that don't fit in one of those two categories. That, oh, well, you can't access it by touch, so you have to be an eye gaze user. Well, what about a head mouse, or what about switches? I think switches are completely underrated and underutilized because they see the eye gaze and they jump to well, that's the tech we want them to use.
I mean, I know Switch users who don't want eye gaze. Switch use is less fatiguing than eye gaze. Because they've got it, they've got those they've been using it so long, the Switch, like, and we tried to, oh, look, we can do eye gaze now. And it was like, oh, this is giving me and I agree, like when I've ever tried eye gaze personally, and now I have the privilege of not needing to use eye gaze, but yeah.
And I work with Mike Hippel, and so many of you know Mike, and he trialed some eye gaze and he found that very thing. It was very, it took even longer for him to communicate with eye gaze. And I'm sure he would have gotten more efficient at it, but it was very difficult to use. And he preferred to use his head array and mouse emulation because that was just faster and more efficient. So less misactivations, you know, he he felt more confident in getting his message across in a timely manner. So
I'm so sad that I didn't get to meet Mike in person I missed him. Like I just didn't, our paths didn't cross, and I'm so bummed because, like we're Facebook friends and I've had conversations with him on that, but like to not see him in person, I was bummed. There's lots of people I didn't get it. I'm like, oh, you're at Closing the Gap, so was I, but I didn't.
you run into him on Friday. You've been here all week, like. And I felt like attendance wasn't quite what it maybe was in the past. I felt
yeah.
like I would be curious, but
It was about 1,000. It was about 1,000 people, I think, from what I heard. When I asked Megan at the beginning, and then the vendor was I felt like it was very light. It was not, I mean, I was glad that Lesson Picks was outside in that thing, because I felt like when I walked through the vendor hall, it was quiet. And maybe was because I only walked through the vendor hall when it was quiet because I was busy otherwise, but.
Yeah, that was probably my biggest disappointment, that there weren't more vendors there, because I like that for trying to steer our purchases throughout the year and then planning for next year. And there was a lot missing in that.
And it's an investment for a vendor to have to come and put out the money for it, and the time and the travel and all of that. So I understand that, but it was not. And then you have a conference like that where I haven't talked to any of the other vendors to find out that they feel like it was worth their time. Like we felt good because we did have traffic where we were. I think it's that time.
We made